Welcome back to iHeartRadio. So bad it's good. Today, I am just so over the moon to talk to our next guest. Now, let me give you a little background. I was doing all of my homework, my reality television homework, and I got through all my Bravo shows. I got through everything I needed to. And my friend Susie said, "Hey, you need to watch this 3-part docuseries that just dropped on Hulu this past week called Betrayal, the Perfect Husband." And I went to Hulu and I said, yeah, this seems right up my alley. And I was immediately riveted to this story, which is just a horrifying, harrowing story that I was just blown away. And I know you guys will be blown away by as well. We have talked so much on this show recently about cheating and betrayal, of course, really connected to Vanderpump Rules and the Scandival story, but it's something that keeps coming up, and it is something that is just shocking to me every time I hear about it. Now, this story revolves around a gentleman named Spencer Heron, who came off as like the perfect guy, the perfect husband, the perfect high school teacher, but what he was hiding was multiple affairs. He had a completely different life, probably many completely different lives than the one that he was presenting to his wife, even going so far as to have relationships with high school students, one being as young as 16 years old, that he eventually went to prison for. Now, our guest today, Jenifer Faison, she's just amazing. And in fact, I would want her on this podcast regardless, because she's a producer on reality television shows, folks. She started a career Judge Judy for that. She did Extreme Home Makeover. She did Jersey Shore. I mean, like, it is just a cornucopia of things that I completely love. But she is telling her story. It started off as a hit podcast that came out, I believe, last year called Betrayal. Season 1 was 8 episodes. I skipped ahead and listened to episode 8, and I'll tell you why as we get into this. But season 2 just dropped. All of the episodes are out. It's a different person's story, and I cannot wait to listen to that as well. But now this has been made into, like I said, a 3-part docuseries on Hulu where Jenifer shares her story, and it is just I think it is must-watch television in my book. I think it is going to be completely up your alley. So, Jenifer Faison, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
How are you doing?
It's interesting. It's been almost a week since the docuseries came out, and I'm doing well. There have been a few bumps and hiccups along the way, but I would have to say a majority of the messages that I have received have spoken to exactly why I did this. And that was so that somebody else who has gone through something similar doesn't feel so alone. Like they're the only person it's happened to, because that's how you feel when that happens to you.
And it's interesting because people like Spencer and men like Spencer, they want you to not tell their stories. They want to make it so you're silenced, because they don't want you to have kind of camaraderie where people are sharing their stories and their shared experiences, which seems to be there's a lot of shared experiences between women and men who do this.
Yes. And I think they don't want to be found out because they are hiding behind such a mask that if anybody gets past the mask and sees who they really are, then their life is kind of, done for. I mean, it's over. When my ex-husband was shaking his head on the couch when I walked in saying it's all over, now I know what he meant. It wasn't like I got caught.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, like, there was this really gripping part, I think it's in episode 2, where she comes back from a work outing, and he usually greets her everywhere. He's the kind of guy that would leave notes every day for her on the coffee pot saying, "You're amazing, I love you," would write her a letter every single day when they were in their courtship. I mean, just that. I remember the first episode thinking like, wow, I'm a real shit guy. I don't do any of this. I mean, this guy made people feel so special. And I was like, it seemed like a job within itself, which I kept thinking about, of like, how many jobs did this guy have? Because he had all of his real jobs, and then he has his jobs of keeping up all of these hidden relationships and your marriage.
Yeah, I have a leaf blower on my porch right now. I'm so sorry.
No, I have a leaf blower going through my mind at all times.
My God. Hold on just one second. I'm so sorry, Ryan.
Don't worry about it at all. Ryan 502 502. I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. Like they
No.
showed up right then, and I thought, okay, well, they'll be done with the front yard, and then they're with the leaf blower. So sorry.
Okay, so 502 537, Ryan. 502 537. Okay. But basically, what I was saying, he had so many jobs, including trying to keep up what he thought your marriage should be. I mean, it was like just darkly impressive. Like it was so psychotic in a way.
It was, and that was what was, I think, compelled me to go through everything and try to figure out who this person was, because it became sinister. It was deviant. It was manipulative and just horrible behavior that he was displaying. And just, I never saw any of it.
I think a lot of people probably don't see it because they're so good at it. Like I was charmed by him in that first episode. And just to give you a little backstory, you guys, they met at a very small college and he was just amazing. He did everything right. Like, and there's so much documentation because he wrote her letters all of the time. We see the menu he wrote on a very beautiful dorm room date of what he was presenting. He was the perfect guy. And then you guys broke up after college. And then, you guys went about your lives and then reconnected. And it was this kind of romantic reconnection where I would imagine everybody in your life was like, of course you guys would get back together. He was that special guy and you were allegedly that special girl. It was always meant to be, which makes it so much more mind-blowing in retrospect.
Yes. I mean, I work in this industry, so I hear stories all the time, and I'm able to tell other people's stories that, you know, may help somebody else with, whatever it is, weight loss. I've done a ton of different ones. And when I would tell my story to my friends, and the reaction that they would get, I realized, like, yeah, this was a pretty extreme scenario. This was a serious case, and he was just that good.
I think the thing that it's like I was watching this and then listening to you and you guys. I need you to organize my life. I mean, she went through. He goes into trial. He gets arrested, and you start combing through. You have access. What started off as like lock his social media accounts, and then that leads you to his email, which leads you to his text. And what you discover is nude after nude. And then you put she puts a timeline together that I think you said that it helped you at the time kind of process things, but I would have been such a mess. Like, I mean, can you put yourself back in that period of time in that head state? Was it just, I'm an investigative reporter all of a sudden?
All of a sudden, yes, I think that's exactly what it was. It was, I had this tool, the computer, and I thought it's got all the answers inside of it. I just have to find it and keep digging. And I do like to research things, and
yeah, that's what you're good at.
Yeah. So I mean, it was like a project, and it kept me going. I could not stop. And I think in a way, maybe, I mean, obviously it didn't take my mind off of everything that was happening, but it gave me something to do with my time.
Your parents are on this as well multiple times, and they're very cute. And it reminds me of my family. And they seem to have not a good sense of humor, but they seem, they were very open about sharing their experience. And your mom even says, like, I thought it was a little weird that she was digging this deeply. She would call me like, I just found this out. And I can't imagine, even from their viewpoints, they must have just been just as shocked as you, because he presented as the perfect son-in-law.
Yes, absolutely. He betrayed so many people in his life. Anyone that knew him, was a friend of his, was related to him, they were betrayed by this person and hurt. My parents poured love into this person, and
You're good. You're good. It's good. Things are just falling.
I
Yeah.
think something just blew up in my brain. So, I think another reason for the story is to show how far betrayal can reach.
Yeah, I mean, because this is you have friends going back to college that are in this. I mean, was it a college friend that married you guys when that was wild. I mean, he played band, I believe, for like the army, and he would go to all of these events, and really just the perfect person. And you must have felt like, wow, I just lucked out. I lucked out because you see so many other stories from other women that are just with horrible men.
Well, and I had waited a long time to get married. I just never, was pushed into thinking that I have to have that. I wanted to wait until I really felt like it was right. So then all of a sudden, my soulmate, the love of my life, pops back up 20 years later. We happen to be in New York at the same time. If that doesn't scream serendipity, I
Yeah,
don't know what is. I
well,
don't
but
know what
now
does.
I was, watching that. I was like, was this all part of his master plan? Was he thinking like, oh, this will look perfect. This will get her at this, this is the perfect kind of romance. I mean, the big question mark in some ways still for me is him. Is that we still, even when you were having these prison or jail conversations over the phone that were recorded, especially that last one, it is still you can feel such a mask up of I'm saying exactly enough to get potentially to the next question. He's not really answering anything point blank, and there's a weird removal that, like, it's like you're the dude that did this, but it's weird, like the way he talks about it is so matter of fact and unfeeling, and like, well, today's a new day. It's very scary.
Well, and that's, again, another reason for sharing the story. It's not something you can just sweep under the rug. This wasn't just like an oops, I made a mistake one time. This is what I believe to be such a big issue that it led him to committing crimes against minors. That's pretty serious.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to say, so this happened with multiple women. He had multiple relationships, but where it even took a darker turn was that he was a teacher of the year multiple times at a high school, and he got involved with high school students. And you obviously know the power dynamic there. It was like he would kind of butter them up and say they were special and say they were pretty and kind of just put out these feelers like it was some game. And then this one girl was brave enough to actually come and tell her story, which was what led to this arrest. Because if she hadn't have done that, he would still be out there potentially. You potentially might still be married to him.
I know. I think about that all the time. I think about that. I think about the fact that he got such a high bond that we weren't able to get him out of jail when he was arrested. Because had he come back into our home, he would have been able to hide everything on his computer. I probably wouldn't have gotten into it.
Did he want you to put up your house or anything? Was there any, I mean, that's the one, another question I had was, how much were you talking to him in those beginning stages before you found out everything? And my thought was, when did he give up on trying to get you back?
Well, I stayed in touch with him. He was arrested June 1st, 2018. I stayed in touch with him until the middle of January of the next year. Because he was convicted then. And the day that he was convicted, I cut off all communication with him. Our divorce was finalized, and that was it. The case was over. He was going to prison. I didn't need to have him in my life anymore at that point. I mean, it had already started where we weren't talking quite as much. But in the beginning, I mean, he was writing letter after letter, pages and pages, and they were all handwritten and pencil. And I think whatever it is in his brain that makes him think that it's not that big of a deal, what he did just allowed him to think that he had a shot at fixing this.
I mean, I was wondering if it was that, if it was obliviousness, or he knows, but he knows he's just so good at this that it's another potential hill to climb, and I can get there. I can get there. I have an inner belief in how bad I can be and how good I am at this. But that's what I kept thinking of, was like, man, I bet he was really pushing to try to, to try to bend this story, to manipulate the story, or as you call it, in reality television, get a good edit, even with all the bad.
Well, and I don't know if he just didn't realize how much information I had.
So
So
you
he
wouldn't
didn't
tell him, hey, guess what? Found your photos last night.
I couldn't. I wasn't when we talked on the phone when he was in jail, I couldn't talk about anything
The
bad.
case. Yeah,
The
okay, gotcha.
case, the other women, anything, because they were listening to all of our phone conversations and gonna use them against him, in the case. So we didn't talk about anything, and
Yeah.
that was really hard and really, really frustrating.
You called out to the police officers when he was being arrested at your house. They had broken down the door earlier and served this notice and then came to get him. And you shouted out to the police officers, he's in cuffs. And you said, he's a really good guy. He's a really good guy. Even then, it's that thing we'll talk ourselves into, that, it's like we can't believe that this is possibly reality all of a sudden, because you were living kind of a perfect existence in terms of a couple at that point.
Well, yeah, and I think part of me too, was feeling all of this shame and shame for him, and he's getting arrested, and I wanted to let the cops know that, like, he's not your typical criminal. He's a really good guy,
Yeah,
This
yeah.
has just gotta be maybe not a mistake, but it I don't know what I was thinking at that point
The
because it
human
all
brain can't
happened so fast.
comprehend. How could you
No.
comprehend when you have such love for somebody that they could possibly be doing the worst things possible?
Mhm.
And it's really wild. And then it's interesting to see then your healing process, which involves making yourself aware of every piece of information. And you guys, they moved to this quaint small town that they had already been familiar with. And they even opened up a wine shop, and they had had that for 2 years. And then you find out later he was having people swing by there. He was having women. I mean, some women were actually your friends. I mean,
Yeah.
he really got everybody involved. And that's why I was just like, your psyche. I mean, obviously you are a very strong person, but how does this not just, I mean, this thing, this doesn't just go away. I know all of this must really help, but how do you deal with this on a daily basis? Do you still have nightmares, or did you ever?
Yeah, I've definitely had a couple, and honestly, I had one about him the other night, which was crazy because I hadn't had one in a long time. And it's just weird. You wake up and you're like, "No, no, no, I don't want that to happen," or, it's like, "Okay, good.
Yeah.
That was just a dream." Um, but I think what happened for me in doing all of the investigating and going through everything and all these different relationships he was having with these adult women, it helped me realize that this wasn't me. It would have happened to anyone he had been married
Yeah,
to. And I think that's,
definitely.
a big piece of this when obviously there was a horrific crime here, and then there's also this betrayal piece, and it's just I don't know where I was going
I
with
mean,
that.
no, I mean, like, it's just stomach turning. I mean, it's stomach turning. And your producer, your co-producer of the podcast, is it Andrea Gunning?
Andrea
Is that
Good
her? Andrea,
Andrea
Andrea,
Gunning. Mhm.
Andrea, it seems incredible. She said when you first started or trying to do this podcast that she only wanted to do it if you didn't come from a place of anger and maybe even more just a place of curiosity. And I was just like, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would be like, F this, F that. How do you get to that place? That was the thing. I'm like, I wouldn't, it's so rationale. You're walking us through this story that actually happened to you. And I truly believe you. Like, I don't believe you are coming from a place of anger. I just don't know how you could do that.
Well, it's been 5 years because honestly, I was angry in the beginning. I mean, I called a few of these women on the phone and bitched them out. I was just like, how dare you? Because I didn't know the scope of my
The
ex's.
manipulation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to call him a sociopath, but I can't diagnose him
Yeah, but
technically,
yeah,
like it's a
I've
little
learned
bit
that doing
more.
this. I've learned that doing this is that, I can't diagnose somebody
Yeah.
narcissistic. I can say this potentially looks like that, but I'm not. I didn't go to school for this. I can just, but it is interesting, and especially with reality television and docuseries, we do see these behaviors pop up again and again, and it is interesting that you can actually like, oh, there's a pattern of behavior with a certain type of person, and it all seems to be a very similar game plan in some ways of making somebody feel special, of isolating somebody, of like love bombing, because
Yeah.
he love bombed the heck out of you, even in college. I was just curious though, like even in his childhood, like what led to this? What led to the creation of Spencer? Because it didn't seem like it would rooted in insecurity because he had so much to be secure about. It was really fascinating to think about what leads somebody to this. And we're
Yeah.
hearing your story, and the victim stories are way more important, but it is interesting how I still don't get the sense of him as a person at all.
Right. Yeah. I can see that because there's a mask up. There's something hiding who he really is, and I can't begin to guess why, he turned out this way and how long he's been doing it. I'm going to go back though to the love bombing. Yes, he gave me a lot of attention and everything, but that attention never waned.
Yeah.
In our whole college relationship, it was like that the whole time. We were married for 7 years. It was like that the whole time. So I guess I didn't see it as love bombing because it didn't change. It was consistent. It wasn't just like in the beginning and he got me and then it was gone.
Yeah.
It was always this I don't even want to say it, but like a loving person toward me.
Yeah, I mean, those are all traits of what we know to be that kind of person. Did he ever get mad at you throughout this process? Did he ever, did the mask ever slip at times and say, well, you this, and this?
No, it didn't. I think so. I had asked him when we started this project if he would let me interview him for it. And he agreed and agreed and agreed. And I think that being in prison, he didn't realize the scope of what podcasts have become and how listened to
He's like,
they are.
He's like, podcasts are nothing. That's fine. Yeah. Make a web series. It's fine. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She's down in her basement by herself. Maybe her sister will listen. So I have not spoken to him or heard from him since.
Yeah, he has been released. He has 15 years of probation, I believe. And there's a very chilling conversation that they use in the docuseries and the final episode of the podcast, where it is the last time, I believe, you hadn't spoken to him in a long time. And it was the last conversation you guys had. And it even ended with him just like, thank you for your time, like a politician of some sort. It was very odd.
Isn't that the craziest way to end a phone call?
Oh, it stuck out to me so much. Thank you for your time. And
yeah,
like,
Carrie,
okay,
the
buddy.
producer, she named that last episode of the podcast. Thank you for your time. And when I first started listening to it, I was like, well, why did she do that? And then I get to the end, I'm like, I got it.
It stood out to me immediately. But even in how it's another thing that I noticed patterns that I've seen and on reality television recently, like I keep saying with Vanderpump Rules, is that even in that conversation, he's saying, hey, listen, you think I have a problem? There's guys in here that whack off in front of people, in front of like he says, now that's a problem. And I'm like, okay, this, these are two completely different situations, but it is interesting because it gives you a peek inside his mind or inside the, because it's not rehabilitation, because I don't believe he's rehabilitating. It's inside campaigning for how he's going to present his case after this.
Well, you can't rehabilitate if you don't think you have anything wrong with you.
Yeah, you ask him about therapy in that conversation, and he's like, nope, there's nothing in here like that. And that scares me because even if you don't believe you have a problem, the state says you have a problem. We have victims coming forward. You've got a problem. Consider yourself lying to yourself. And then if you're not actively treating that problem, I don't have high hopes for what his future holds. And I don't even care about him for the people that's around him.
Right. And from what I've studied and learned over the last few years, it is not something that's, there's a lot of different things people can be addicted to. And, let's say it was a sex addiction, or part of that was what his issue is. Those are not easy to get through. It's as hard as trying to get over any other type of addiction.
Yeah. I mean,
so
you guys, I mean, truly, you've got to watch all 3 episodes and then go download this podcast, subscribe immediately, rate it 5 stars. I'm really thrilled to even listen to the second season, which isn't even your story. It turns out things like this happen to women all the time, which is
yes. Oh my
shocking.
goodness.
But I got to imagine, like, after even going through this, even if it was 5 years ago, coming at this at a podcast and making this a show, you're once again making yourself so vulnerable. Was the main driving force of that to, like you said, share your story with others, to share those, and also to highlight the victims, like the 16-year-old, very brave woman that came forward?
Yeah, definitely. It's, I think being a producer, I knew if I was going to do this, that I had to be open and vulnerable and as honest about everything as I could be, because the story, there's no need there. You don't have to exaggerate any piece of the story. It's that, kind of shocking all around. So I just went into it knowing, okay, this is what I ask people to do for me all the time, is to share their story. And now it's my turn. And if I can help somebody else out there feel less alone and understood and heard, and give them some encouragement that, yes, it does get better. And then if I can also make a safe space for victims to come forward, or at least, kind of teach people, like, that's what we need to provide for these young people, because most don't come forward and report it. So,
I mean, we see this all the time of, like, women then get shouted down. They're told they're crazy. Society, we've really got a lot of work to do still, even though we've come so far, but we see it today. We see it with big celebrity cases and things of that nature. It's really scary to come forward. And that's why, I keep saying the 16-year-old, she's grown now, but watching her speak at that event with you, I was just blown away, being able to be that well-spoken about something that will stay with her for the rest of her life. Because it's one thing I don't consider myself an adult, but I know I am one, is that was her formative years. Like, I kept thinking, like, imagine somebody that you looked up to, because he was that teacher that people looked up to, that believed, like, if somebody believed in you and then said you were all the things that you were scared you weren't, that kind of thing, that's like your heart only feels certain things for the first time once. Yeah. And it then sets you up for the rest of your life. And for her to be able to speak that coherently about it and really seem to have a good grasp of things was very relieving. But I know a lot of people out there don't get to that point, that go through these experiences.
Right. And I think, that speech was so beautiful and brave. And I know that there are people out there that saw that it's given them encouragement and strength, because that's all that was just pure strength right now, or right there.
It really was. And I was just kind of blown. It was another thing that I was blown away by, because the arch of the story, there is like this kind of titillating factor that kind of hits all those pleasure buttons that we've turned sometimes these stories into pop culture. But then it really does a good service in actually showing that there are real people involved. This is not just your story, but other stories as well. I mean, they show a picture of him at school with these kids, and she's the only one not smiling in the photo, the 16-year-old, because he was like touching her inappropriately at the time in the photo. And he has a smile on his face. There are those kind of really just gives you goosebumps when you see those things. Also, on a lighter level, how much bad luck was it for him that he was a videographer and there is so much video footage to use in this 3-part docuseries? Like, we had your wedding from 8 billion different angles. Like, I was like, this is so, I mean, did you produce the wedding footage or did he? Because I was like, there is so much footage.
No, those are actually high school students of his that did our wedding video. And I've gotten so many compliments for it. And I mean, they just did a phenomenal job.
I was like, you guys had angles, like reality shows aren't filmed as good as this. You had angles you were cutting away to, but at the same time, it tells this story at a deeper level than the podcast, which is brilliant, even does. And I think it really puts you in there immediately where you realize just how real this is. I also want to point out he cheated on you the week of your wedding.
Yes. It never stopped. I mean, I think he was behaving this way even before we re-met in New York, and it just never stopped. He just couldn't. I want to believe that he wanted to, or maybe believe that he was going to be able to, but he was just too far gone. But I have to, on a lighter note, now that you bring this up, one of my friends who's a producer that I've known for a long time, we were talking the other day after she had watched it, and she said, Jenifer, it's like you've been waiting to produce this your whole life, because I had so much archival stuff.
Oh, you guys, she's bringing out the poetry book. She's bringing out every letter. There's scrapbook after scrapbook. I was like, I do not organize any of my life this way. So part of me was like, damn, this must be nice to like, you had everything at the disposal to tell this story. And I thought, how great for this docuseries, but just I mean, have you ever thought of getting rid of any of that stuff?
Yes, I think I will now, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to before. I just, those were happy times in my life. I don't look back at those 7 years of marriage or that time in college and have negative feelings or thoughts about it. I was really happy. I mean, of course not 100% of the time, all the time, but for the most part, they were really good times in my life. And I've always saved everything, and I've moved around with boxes full of stuff my whole life. And now I realize, though, that, it's served its purpose, and maybe have to have like a little bonfire out there or something.
Oh my God, we can film that for like an addendum episode of this.
We'll get Lala and Ariana out there, and they can burn their stuff.
Speaking of Ariana, she's in a new relationship, and I know this is kind of a personal question, so feel free to not answer. But in terms of other women out there, after they go through something this intense, are you able to date again? Are you able to trust some? I mean, I just can't imagine you facing another man of any sort and he telling you a story and you're like, sure, buddy. Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, how would you possibly, is it ruined?
Oh, you're going to the gas station?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, exactly. Is it ruined for the rest of your life? I mean, like, do you even think about things like that? I'm sure your friends do for you.
Yeah, I have dated a little bit since all of this happened, and it was great. And I was reminded that relationships can be enjoyable and fun, and not everybody is like this. And honestly, I have to believe that I'm not going to run into another Spence again. I mean, what are the odds?
Jenifer, let's be cautious, please. Let's just.
I'm not even living in LA anymore.
I feel like it's not just LA. I think that's like we've got to be cautiously optimistic at this. Yes. I mean, that was what I kept thinking. I was just like, wow, that's just so much so much going into this. I mean, but it's for anybody once you get to a certain age and all that. We all have these kind of baggage. It's just your baggage is so intense in what this person did to so many people. Also, as we start winding down here, and thank you so much for being here. You have on the show and your podcast exes of, not exes, but people that he hooked up with, people that actually came on to share their stories. Which, what is the conversation like to even get them to come on and talk about their experience when they could kind of open up themselves to be perceived as doing something wrong as well as Spencer?
I think for several of the women that I spoke with on the podcast and a couple of the ones that came forward on the docuseries, I believe they had been carrying around a lot of shame surrounding what they had done and the choices that they had made as adult women, especially when everything came out about his crimes. And I think they're very embarrassed that they were involved with this person or that they fell for his manipulation and lies. So in speaking with them, and I was at a different place at that time, I found empathy for them. And so I could have those conversations and let them know, listen, don't let this person define your whole life. Okay, maybe you made a mistake. You can deal with that on your own, but I'm here to say that don't waste any more time feeling ashamed of your involvement with this person. You have to move on.
I'm just like, I mean, it's just, it really is just incredible. And it seems like you've been like that your whole life, from this docuseries, what it presents you as, and even your family. It seems like you have a strong family. It seems like all of these things that must have really helped. How did reality television and the things that you do in your job, has that affected the way you look at the world at all? I mean, even when you thought Spencer was the perfect husband, you deal with reality television and seen some or been around really intense behavior, which reality television really highlights. Has that ever shaped your worldview in any sense?
Well, sure. I think as a producer, you kind of live by your instincts. If you're really invested in the story and you're listening, you have to just kind of follow what your instincts are. And I started questioning mine quite a bit after this,
Yeah.
Constantly saying, what did I miss? What did I miss? Trying to rack my brain for some little nugget of something that I could say, oh, okay, that's, I should have paid more attention to that. I think, though, it's going to help me in my career even more now being on the other side of it.
Oh, yeah.
I have definitely more understanding for what people are doing when they're really sharing and opening up their own lives.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, being able to, I always talk about this, being able to take myself out of my own person and my own feelings, and then hear somebody else's through even doing these things has opened me up so many, just so much different line of thinking, and has made me kind of a better overall person in some ways. Was there one moment doing the podcast or doing this docuseries that was the hardest moment for you? They were like, that was the hardest day of doing any of this?
I think it was really hard. I had a conversation. Andrea and I in the docuseries are recording another podcast episode, a bonus episode where I speak with another woman that was with Spencer. And she had known him for 20 years, for a long time. And those conversations, they are hard, even though I want to have them. And she was gracious enough to speak with me. I still learn something new every time. And so I don't know if you saw that part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was hard to discover that.
Yeah, and in those moments, because the human psyche is going to react how the humans, we can't always be these kind of like perfect, like separated, and you're doing this job and this is going to go out to the world, but you're still this person that lived this story. So it's and I'm so glad you had your producer with you to have another set of eyes and ears to this process, to maybe sometimes see what you might not see, which was just perfect. And I can't wait to see what you guys do in the future. Two last thoughts with this is that part of me, I can't diagnose as anybody, but there seems to be potentially narcissistic tendencies with Spencer. There's part of me that wonders, I wonder if he'll get off on any of this. I wonder if, we sometimes see the bad boy gets attention. People can't really decipher what's good or bad attention. And I wonder if there'll be a part of him that'll be like, I'm a star.
You are not the first person that has brought that up.
Damn it. Can we pretend I'm the first
yes,
person?
Yeah. You are the first person that has brought that up. It could be true. It could be true. I don't know. And I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
That last conversation I had with him, I just thought, I am not going to get any answers from this person.
No, I even thought about that. I keep bringing up that Scandal thing, but like Tom and Raquel are going to tell their story. We're not going to really get the actual story. So why do we even care at this point? Let's move on and find out new, exciting stories that we can focus on, because we're always going to get what they think that they should be saying instead of their actual base desires. It's just wild. Would you ever option this for a movie, or are we done with this story in terms of telling this on this level?
I think this would make a fabulous movie.
It completely would. I mean, that's what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, oh, I see this shot. We can use some of his drone equipment. Like we can see, I was like, this is
flashback, sideways.
You've got small town. You could do a New Kids on the Block, sad, hanging, tough cover. So, I mean, you could do the whole thing. There's a New Kids on the Block scene, you guys. There's a New Kids on the Block scene at their college at the beginning where he memorized the dance moves. And I was a kid. I think it was like 1989, but I remember being a kid, like trying to learn those dance moves, and he was doing it at college with his buddies wearing a Batman shirt, very 1989 as well. I really could see this as a movie. Before I let you go, thank you so much for your time. You have worked in reality television and all of the shows that we love. I just want to ask about a couple of shows and give me a first thought. Your experience on Jersey Shore in 2010.
Oh, so much fun. It was second season of Jersey Shore. We were in Miami.
So they had exploded in popularity.
Exploded. And we were in Miami. And I had worked on shows before, like Victoria Beckham, where we would have crowds of paparazzi following us wherever. But these kids literally were walking everywhere. So every day we were just surrounded and hounded by paparazzi while we were trying to film and act like, they were just normal kids going to the beach.
They were the Jersey Beatles all of a sudden.
They were.
I mean, that time, they really, I have Christmas ornaments with like Snooki on them. They like, their faces were on everything.
And they're still going.
Oh my God. Which I love, actually. Yes. I love that they realize they're stronger together. And I'm totally down for that. So that was an amazing experience for you. Judge Judy, what was she like?
She's like she is on TV. She's very direct. She knows what she wants to say. She doesn't put up with bullshit, but she's also, generous and brought us all out to her house after the Emmys one year. And so that was a good experience.
Yeah, there's like footage of her and her mom at the Emmys, you guys. It was really cool. You actually had a Bravo experience. You were a producer on Timber Creek Lodge. Is that right? My
favorite show ever.
I mean, yes. a one season wonder that doesn't really get brought up in conversations about, I wish, like it is interesting. What was your experience on that?
It was so much fun. It was actually the second season of Après Ski, but we changed the name. And so it's kind of like that Vanderpump Rules where it's, upstairs, downstairs. We followed the staff of this beautiful ski lodge in Whistler. Yeah. And those are my favorite type of shows, when you're following this group of people that are working and intertwining, but then you've also got the guests that come in that add stuff to it. But then we would go and take helicopters and land on top of a glacier. And it was just, those are the shows that I really, really love, when you can just sit and watch really the raw reality play out in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think I'm still, and audiences are still fascinated with Below Deck. Just that thing of seeing these like beautiful views, but then also seeing what goes on behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. It's just ripe, and I love it. Extreme Home Makeover. That was a big part of your career. What was
Yeah.
what was that like?
Oh, man, traveling the country, 2 years on the road. This group of people that make this show or made this show, everybody became a family, and it will never die. It will just we will always have a connection, anybody who's worked on that show, because you are really in the trenches. And, there's a lot of sadness to some of these stories. And then at the end, there's this huge, giving back.
Yeah,
So,
move that truck.
yeah.
Or, yeah.
And I'm a crier. So I just, I'd be on set crying the entire time.
I mean, you could literally, I hope you'll come back sometime just to talk reality and your career, because it truly is such a fascinating, we all love it so much, but
Mhm.
I really want to make sure people watch this. It's a 3-part docuseries. I'm going to put all the information in the show notes. It's on Hulu right now. You can binge all 3 episodes. It's a little dark. I split one. I did 1.5 on Saturday night and finished it up on Sunday morning, but I think it is well worth your time. Also, go check out the podcast. Season 2 is an all new story from an all new woman that I think is worth your time as well. Is there anything else coming up that we need to be aware of or that we can support you with?
Betrayal season 3 just got picked up as a podcast. So
Congratulations.
thank
That's
you.
truly, and it's really amazing to see what we can like turn out of these horrible life experiences if we don't get sucked under the gale force of these betrayals.
That's right. It's using your creativity, your art, whatever that is. If it's writing a book, writing a song, producing a TV show, there's so many ways that we can express ourselves and share these stories and help
Yeah.
others.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us here today. Really, truly, just a pleasure to talk to you. And that was the coolest thing. Thank you for even responding, because I was watching this thing, you guys, and I was like, why not? I'll just shoot her a DM. And you guys know me, the audience. I'm not brave like that. But I was like, I really want to talk to her. And you DM'd pretty much immediately. And then I got scared because she was listening to the Tom Sandoval interview. And I was like, no. I was like, you don't have to listen. Let's just trust that it's gonna be fine. No, you don't need to listen. No, it's gonna be
Ryan,
fine.
you also took 45 minutes to preface the fact that during that interview, you were like kind of in awe of him.
Yes.
So you were like apologizing leading up to that interview.
Oh, completely, because I was enamored with this guy, but it reminded me of like this guy had such a mask on, even to people like me, where I looked up to this dude. I just thought he was amazing, and I had no clue all of this stuff was going on. It really did shock me, and it really it just made me think like, this story not was similar, but just in terms of masks and the lies that we tell really just blew me away. So thank you. And you guys go listen, go watch. And Jenifer, I hope somewhere down the line you'll come back on again so we can talk more.
Absolutely. I'll get a Bravo show and I'll come on and give you the inside scoop.
Please, let's do it. Après Ski is coming back.